Beloved, there are moments in life when you can sense deep in your spirit that something is resisting you. Not a person, not a situation, but a force, a pressure, an invisible resistance that rises every time you try to move forward. Today, I want to speak directly to that battle because I want you to know God does not want you fighting blindly. He wants you fighting boldly. He wants you armed, aware, and aligned with heaven's authority. There are real battles being fought over your mind, your peace, your family, your health, and your destiny. But the good news is this: no evil plan has the permission to succeed when a child of God stands in prayer. Prayer is not a whisper into the night. It is a declaration into the spirit realm. It is the spiritual fire that exposes, dismantles, and destroys every assignment of darkness. Listen closely. The enemy attacks what he fears. You are targeted because you are valuable. You are attacked because you are anointed. You feel resistance because something great is inside you. Some of you have wondered, why is my life facing so much opposition? Why does every breakthrough feel blocked? Why do I sense something fighting me even when everything looks ordinary? It is because the enemy sees what you often forget. Your future is dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. But here is a promise you must grip with both hands. Every plan formed against you is already marked for destruction through prayer. Every curse is reversible. Every attack is stoppable. Every evil strategy collapses when a believer rises in spiritual authority. Because at the end of this message, I will lead you in a targeted, heaven-backed prayer designed to break, cancel, and crush every evil plan against your life. You cannot afford to miss it. This prayer is a weapon, and today you will learn how to use it. Let me begin here. Prayer is not begging God to rescue you. Prayer is stepping into a victory He already secured. When you pray, you are not trying to defeat the enemy. You are enforcing the defeat already written in the blood of Christ. The scriptures say, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." The verse did not say the weapon won't form. It didn't say the attack won't come. It says the weapon will not prosper, meaning it loses power the moment you pray. Prayer drains the strength of the enemy. Prayer breaks the backbone of fear. Prayer disarms demons. Prayer builds a shield around your destiny. And understand this: the traps designed to destroy you are about to reveal the God who protects you. The attacks meant to break you are about to become testimonies that elevate you. Every evil plan is about to crumble under the weight of divine intervention. So today, you will pray with confidence, not fear. You will pray with authority, not anxiety. You will pray knowing that heaven is backing every word. You are stepping into a season where every evil plan dies before it touches you, where every curse breaks before it reaches you, where every attack fails before it forms. Stay with me until the end, and we will pray a prayer that will shift the atmosphere around your life. Your breakthrough begins now. You say to me, God sees the invisible battles I'm fighting, and I want you to hear this with the weight of heaven behind it. Yes, He does. There is not a single tear that slips from your eyes unnoticed. There is not a single fear that rises in your chest without His awareness. There is not a single attack, silent or loud, that escapes His sight. You may feel unseen, unheard, or overlooked by people, but you are never unseen by the God who watches over your life with divine precision. Sometimes the greatest battles are the ones nobody else knows about, the thoughts that whisper discouragement in the dark, the heaviness that sits in your chest for no clear reason, the sudden opposition that rises right when you decide to step into your purpose. Those battles are not imagined. You are not exaggerating them. They are real. And I want to speak directly into that reality today. There are moments when the pressure is so intense that you think, is something wrong with me? Why does life feel like a fight even when I'm trying to do everything right? Hear me, the enemy doesn't waste ammunition on empty targets. You are being fought because you carry something valuable. There is an assignment over your life so important that darkness trembles at the thought of you stepping into it. And God sees all of it. He sees the nights when sleep refuses to settle. He sees the days when your smile is fragile and your strength feels thin. He sees the people who speak against you behind closed doors. He sees the traps that were set to make you stumble. He hears conversations you never heard. He observes motives you could not discern. Before a plot is formed, he is already aware of it. Before a scheme against you is designed, he has already drawn the boundary line that says, this far and no further. You may feel surrounded, but you are not alone. You may feel overwhelmed, but you are deeply covered. God sees the invisible battles that follow you into your workplace, your relationships, your home, your mind. And the same God who sees is the God who steps in. He watches so he can intervene. He notices so he can protect. He observes so he can strengthen you at the exact moment you are about to break. There are battles around you, yes, but there are angels around those battles. You are not navigating a spiritual war unattended. Heaven is not passive. Heaven is not silent. Heaven is not distant. Wherever the enemy plots, God positions. Wherever the enemy schemes, God safeguards. Wherever the enemy whispers lies, God speaks truth louder. You must understand this. When God sees your battle, he does not simply observe. He responds. He moves. He shields. He speaks into the storm you haven't said a word about. He covers wounds you haven't confessed. He protects areas of your life you didn't even realize were under attack. So when you stand in prayer, you are not informing God, you are aligning with him. You're stepping into a protection that was already in place before you knew you needed it. You're leaning into a God who has already examined the battlefield and declared that the enemy will not have the final say. And the battle that is invisible to you is fully visible to him, fully known, fully measured, and fully defeated. You say to me, evil plans cannot prevail against a person who knows how to pray. And I want you to let that truth sink so deep into your spirit that it shakes every fear loose. Prayer is not a gentle whisper into the heavens. It is a declaration into the battlefield. When you pray, you are not speaking into empty air. You are speaking into realms where darkness has been plotting, planning, and positioning itself against your destiny. And when your voice rises in prayer, every evil plan begins to lose structure, lose strength, and lose power. There is something the enemy fears more than anything else, a believer who understands the authority of prayer, a believer who does not pray out of routine, but out of revelation, knowing that prayer is a weapon forged in the fire of God's power. Evil plans may gather, forces of darkness may arrange themselves in secret, but the moment you step into prayer, heaven stands up and darkness bows down. You see, the enemy studies your weaknesses, your patterns, your past. He searches for open doors, vulnerable places, emotional wounds. He designs plans with precision, hoping you won't notice what is moving beneath the surface. But prayer exposes what the enemy hides. Prayer shines a divine light on every dark strategy and reveals what was meant to remain unseen. And once it is exposed, it cannot stand. When you pray, you are not begging God to intervene. You are activating what he has already promised. You are pulling down strongholds, shutting doors that were secretly opened, silencing voices that were whispering against you. Prayer transforms you from a passive target to an active warrior. It shifts you from being attacked to being positioned. It changes the atmosphere around your life. Some of you have been asking, why do I keep facing the same patterns? Why do certain battles feel persistent, almost predictable? And I want to tell you, persistence in attack requires persistence in prayer. The enemy repeats what you refuse to confront. But when you rise with prayer, real prayer, faith-filled prayer, scripture-rooted prayer, every cycle begins to crack. There are plans right now that were drawn against your mind, but prayer will shatter them. Plans designed to weaken your confidence, to drain your joy, to upset your peace. Prayer will dismantle them layer by layer. There were assignments against your family, your job, your health, your future. But prayer does not negotiate with darkness. Prayer eradicates darkness. And listen to this, the enemy can attack you, but he cannot withstand a praying believer. He can send fear, but he cannot survive your faith. He can design traps, but he cannot escape God's intervention. The moment you open your mouth in prayer, you become untouchable in the Spirit. You become fortified, covered, surrounded by divine fire. Prayer does not just stop the enemy, it reverses what he planned. What was meant to break you becomes a testimony. What was intended to discourage you becomes a revelation. What was designed to destroy you becomes the very reason you rise. So I say to you today, when you pray, every evil plan loses power. When you pray, darkness loses territory. When you pray, the enemy loses confidence. Because prayer is not just your response to attack, prayer is God's weapon placed in your hands to guarantee victory. Because prayer is not just your response to attack, prayer is God's weapon placed in your hands to guarantee victory. And that victory is not something you are trying to earn, it is something you are stepping into. You are not fighting for victory, you are fighting from victory. And I want you to hear me with your heart, not just your ears. The battle you're facing today has already been decided in your favor. You may feel the pressure of warfare. You may sense the intensity of spiritual resistance. But the outcome is not uncertain. Heaven settled it long before the enemy ever lifted a hand against you. You are not engaging in a conflict where the result is up for negotiation. You are walking out a triumph that Christ sealed with his sacrifice. Sometimes you look at the fight in front of you and think, this is too big. This is too painful. This is too much for me. But what feels overwhelming to you is already under the feet of the one who won the war. The enemy tries to convince you that you are losing, not because you are actually defeated, but because he hopes you'll forget the victory you already possess. Hear this, the enemy's greatest weapon is deception. If he can make you believe that you're powerless, he doesn't need to defeat you. You'll lay down your own weapons. But when you stand in the truth that the battle is already won, your spirit rises, your confidence strengthens, and your prayers become declarations instead of requests. When Christ said, "It is finished," it was not a poetic phrase. It was a legal announcement in the spirit realm. It meant the curse is broken. The power of darkness is shattered. The authority of evil is limited. The victory of God's people is secure. So when you pray, you're not trying to convince God to help you win. You're aligning yourself with a victory he already gave you. Every time you open your mouth in faith, you are reminding the enemy of a defeat he wishes you'd forget. Think about it this way: the enemy is fighting from a place of loss. You are fighting from a place of triumph. He is battling to stop you from discovering what is already yours. You are standing on ground sealed by the blood of Christ. That means nothing the enemy forms, nothing he imagines, nothing he plots has the authority to override what God has established. And this is why your prayers carry power. They are rooted in a victory that cannot be reversed. You aren't praying from fear, you're praying from authority. You aren't praying from uncertainty, you're praying from promise. You aren't praying from defeat, you're praying from a seat at the right hand of God, where Christ reigns and your victory is anchored. The enemy attacks you as if he has a chance, but his hope is in your ignorance, not in his strength. The moment you realize you're fighting from victory, not for victory, the entire battlefield shifts. Suddenly, fear loses its voice, doubt loses its weight, intimidation loses its grip, because you know something the enemy cannot change. The war has already been won, and you are standing in the overflow of that triumph. The war has already been won, and you are standing in the overflow of that triumph. And because you are standing in that victory, something extraordinary begins to happen. God takes every evil assignment designed to harm you and turns it into a divine advantage. What the enemy meant for destruction becomes the very material God uses to build your destiny. The plans meant to break you become the pathways that elevate you. The schemes crafted to trap you become the stories that strengthen you. You see, the enemy is strategic, but God is sovereign. The enemy plans with calculation, but God moves with perfection. Every time darkness draws a blueprint against your life, heaven is already drafting a greater one. The enemy strikes to wound. God uses that strike to awaken your purpose. The enemy tries to block your progress. God turns the block into a bridge. Nothing the enemy forms is wasted. God transforms it, redirects it, reshapes it into something that serves your calling. Some of you have walked through situations that made you wonder, why did God allow this? And while you may not have understood it in the moment, you will one day look back and realize that the very opposition that tried to crush you ended up uncovering strength you didn't know you had. The betrayal that was supposed to break your spirit made you wiser. The losses that tried to weaken your trust pushed you deeper into God's presence. The attacks that tried to silence your voice enlarged your testimony. I want you to hear this clearly. God does not simply protect you from evil plans. He reverses them. He doesn't just stop the enemy's intentions. He hijacks them for his own glory. There has never been a moment in your life when God said, I didn't see that attack coming. No, he saw it. He permitted it, and he transformed it so you could rise stronger than you ever imagined. Think of the battles you've walked through, the nights that felt heavy, the seasons that felt unfair, the situations that felt like the enemy had the upper hand. Even in those moments, God was working. While the enemy was plotting, God was positioning. While the enemy was attacking, God was aligning. While the enemy was speaking lies, God was writing victory. And here's the truth: the enemy cannot design a plan so dark that God cannot turn it into light. He cannot send an attack so fierce that God cannot use it as fuel for your future. He cannot orchestrate a storm so violent that God cannot turn it into a testimony of his faithfulness. This is divine advantage when what was meant to destroy you becomes the catalyst that lifts you. When the pain that tried to break you becomes the very place God births new strength. When the valley that felt hopeless becomes the ground where God plants the seeds of your greatest breakthrough. So when the enemy rises against you, do not fear. Look deeper. Look spiritually. Look with the eyes of someone who knows that God wastes nothing. Every plot has purpose. Every attack has assignment. Every storm has instruction. Every setback carries a hidden setup. Because the God who fights for you does not simply cancel evil, he converts it. He turns every strike of darkness into a stepping stone toward your destiny. He turns every strike of darkness into a stepping stone toward your destiny. And this is why your breakthrough is connected to consistency in prayer, because the enemy fears nothing more than a believer who refuses to stop praying. A moment of prayer can shake the atmosphere. Yes, but a life of prayer builds an unbreakable fortress around your spirit. Consistency is where power multiplies. Consistency is where authority deepens. Consistency is where victory becomes a lifestyle instead of a moment. You see, the enemy knows he cannot stop a praying believer, so he tries to silence you. Not with loud attacks, but with subtle discouragements. He whispers, "You're too tired. You've prayed enough. Nothing is changing." He tries to convince you that your prayers are hitting the ceiling, that your words are empty, that heaven is quiet. But hear me, every prayer you pray is building something unseen, something eternal, something the enemy cannot withstand. Your prayers may seem ordinary to you, but they are devastating to the kingdom of darkness. Every time you pray, you are tightening the walls around your peace. You are fortifying the ground under your feet. You are sharpening the sword in your hand. A single prayer is powerful, but consistent prayer becomes unstoppable. Think about this. Breakthroughs rarely come to those who pray once. They come to those who press, persist, and refuse to let go. The door doesn't always open the first time you knock. The answer doesn't always appear the first time you ask. The mountain doesn't always move the first time you speak to it. But when you stay consistent, when you keep knocking, keep asking, keep speaking, your persistence becomes a force the enemy cannot resist. And I want you to understand this with all your heart. The enemy studies your patterns. He knows what discourages you, what distracts you, what weakens your fire. But when you choose consistency, when you pray even when you're tired, even when you're unsure, even when you're under attack, you break the rhythm of the enemy's plans. You interrupt his strategy. You disrupt his cycles. You destroy his confidence. Some of you are closer to breakthrough than you realize. The pressure you feel is not a sign that your prayers are failing. It is a sign that your prayers are working. The enemy attacks the hardest where he fears the greatest breakthrough. The resistance is proof that something is shifting, something is shaking, something is opening in the spirit. Consistency in prayer is what carries you from battle to breakthrough, from resistance to release, from warfare to victory. When you pray consistently, heaven moves consistently. When you stay in prayer, you stay in alignment. When you remain in prayer, you remain under divine protection. And the truth is this: the enemy can handle a believer who prays once, but he trembles before a believer who prays daily. He can handle a moment of fire, but he cannot withstand a lifestyle of fire. He can endure a single cry for help, but he cannot endure a continuous roar of faith. So stay consistent, keep praying, keep pressing. Keep standing in the presence of God with persistence that refuses to be shaken, because your consistency is the key that unlocks the breakthrough already assigned to your life.